A Chinese ship was brutally destroyed by 2 U.S. warships that entered Chinese territory in South China Sea. The U.S. deployed 2 warships Wednesday in a disputed South China Sea shoal where 2 Chinese ships collided earlier in the week while trying to drive away a smaller Philippine ship in a high seas accident that raised alarms about maritime safety. Both China and the Philippines claim Scarborough Shoal and other outcroppings in the South China Sea. Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Taiwan also lay overlapping claims in the contested waters. The USS Higgins, a guided missile destroyer, and USS Cincinnati, a littoral combat ship, were shadowed by a Chinese Navy ship while sailing about 30 nautical miles, 55 kilometers, from the Scarborough Shoal. There were no reports of any untoward incident, Philippine Coast Guard Commodore J. Tariella said, citing information from U.S. officials and a Philippine surveillance flight. The U.S. Navy has staged what it calls freedom of navigation voyages and overflights in the South China Sea for years to challenge China's restrictions and its demand for entry notifications in virtually the entire stretch of the disputed waters that it claims. That has angered China, and its forces have had close runs-in with U.S. warships and aircraft on such patrols in international waters and airspace. The deployment happened after Washington's ambassador to Manila, Mary Kay Carlson, on Tuesday condemned the latest reckless action by China directed against a Philippine vessel in Scarborough. The rich fishing atoll off the northwestern Philippines has been the scene of increasingly tense confrontations between the Chinese and Philippine Coast Guard, fishing and other ships in recent years. The Philippines is the oldest treaty ally of the U.S. in Asia. Washington has repeatedly warned that it's obligated to defend the Philippines if Filipino forces come under an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. On Monday, a Chinese Navy destroyer and a Chinese Coast Guard ship accidentally collided while trying to block and drive away a smaller Philippine Coast Guard ship, the BRP Sulwan, about 10.5 nautical miles, 19 kilometers, from Scarborough. Video footages made public by the Philippine Coast Guard show the Chinese Coast Guard ship blasting its powerful water cannon and a number of Chinese personnel standing at the bow shortly before that section was hit by the fast-turning Chinese Navy ship. Shortly after the collision, the video shows the heavily shattered bow of the Chinese Coast Guard ship without the Chinese personnel, who were standing on deck before the crash. The Chinese Navy ship sustained deep dents and what appeared to be linear gushes on its hull. Japan, Australia and New Zealand expressed alarm on Wednesday over the dangerous maneuvers that led to the collision in the busy waters. A key global trade route. Japan upholds the rule of law and opposes any actions which increase tensions. Our concern goes to the repeated actions in the South China Sea, Japanese ambassador to Manila Endo Kanzuya said in a post on X. The Australian embassy in Manila expressed concern by the dangerous and unprofessional conduct of Chinese vessels near Scarborough Shoal involving the Philippine Coast Guard, saying in a statement the incident highlights the need for de-escalation, restraint and respect for international law. This is a learning experience for the People's Republic of China, Tariella, the Philippine Coast Guard Commodore, told a news conference in Manila. For so many years, we have been reminding them to stop dangerous maneuvers, to stop risky blockings, to adhere to the anti-collision regulations because if there is a very high chance of miscalculation, this kind of collision incident would happen. Tariella spoke a few hours after a Chinese fighter jet flew as close as 500 feet, 150 meters, to try to drive away a Philippine Coast Guard plane on a surveillance flight on Wednesday over the Scarborough with invited journalists on board. The Chinese jet carried out dangerous maneuvers for about 20 minutes, including flying about 200 feet, 60 meters, above the small Philippine aircraft, Tariella said. Regional security analysts have warned that the series of encounters in the Scarborough Shoal underscores the growing volatility in the South China Sea, where miscalculation could easily spiral into a broader conflict involving multiple nations. The contested waters are not only rich in marine resources but also lie along one of the world's busiest maritime trade routes. making them strategically significant to global commerce. Security experts noted that the recent collision between two Chinese vessels while attempting to intercept a Philippine Coast Guard ship reflects the mounting risks of China's aggressive maneuvers. This incident is a textbook case of how overzealous tactics can backfire, said Dr. Marcus Hall, a maritime security scholar at the National University of Singapore. China's attempts to block vessels have now led to damage within its own fleet, exposing the dangers of escalation. The United States, in reinforcing its presence in the region, reiterated its commitment to the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty with the Philippines. Washington has also highlighted that freedom of navigation in the South China Sea is a core interest not only for the U.S. but for the international community. U.S. Pacific Fleet spokesperson Commander Jane Mitchell stressed that operations near Scarborough Shoal were conducted lawfully, responsibly, and in accordance with international law. Meanwhile, Philippine officials expressed gratitude for the show of support from allies but emphasized the need for diplomatic solutions. "We do not wish to see the South China Sea become a flashpoint for war," said Philippine Foreign Secretary Enrique Manalo. "Our position remains clear. Disputes must be resolved peacefully, based on international law, particularly the 2016 arbitral ruling." The United Nations has yet to issue an official statement, but diplomatic circles in New York have indicated that the latest developments may be raised in upcoming General Assembly sessions. For now, Southeast Asian neighbors remain on high alert, watching closely how China will respond after sustaining damage in what many describe as its own reckless maneuver.